All right, in this episode, we have coming up what it means to follow Christ. This is like the Good Samaritan. So, we're going to do a lot with the Good Samaritan. So, who stopped? Who kept walking? How does that kind of indwell in us? Who should we be? How can we be the Samaritan? Is it possible to be the Samaritan? Was the Samaritan really good? So we need to understand all of what that means and to be Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus. So stick with me, guys, as I go over the end of Luke 10. So this is part 2. I'll see you guys in a minute. Hey, welcome to Bible 365. I'm your host, Kathy Carter, and this channel is here to kind of merge Bible living with Bible literacy. So we are going to be using the New Testament this year in order to understand what it's like to live as a follower of Christ. I have a link below in the description that I have a download that will bring you to a chronological Bible reading of the New Testament. So what I want you to do is read every day and join me and hopefully some friends as we talk about what it means to live as a kingdom builder. Let's get started. Okay, we're moving on in Luke 10. So we had finished where the 70 went out and he's like, some of the people are going to accept you. Some people are not going to accept you. And those people, like, woe to those people. It's going to be a rough go for them, worse than it was for Sodom and Gomorrah. And now we move on and it says the 70 returned and they come back with all this great joy. And so this is really exciting because they go out. Just imagine, right? That you're these 70. You've watched the apostles go out. You've watched Jesus. You've been following him along. And then he says to you, I want you now to go out. This is a life-changing kind of thing. And if any of you have ever been on a missions trip, and I was on a missions trip, it was completely life-changing for me. Like, I went overseas. I went to Lebanon during the time of a great war. And I don't think that I did anything particular and special, but I went as a Christian, as a follower of Christ, and just met incredible, loving people who love the Lord and people different than me. And it all changed my life, right? The things that we spoke about, the things that we heard that happened in their lives, because our nations are so very different from each other. And so it was really life altering for me. And I remember when I was asked to go, what that meant. Because I remember when I was asked to go, I was just coming, I had been in a place where, I live a really good life in a suburb like anybody else. I have a very stereotypical, like, my kids go to the same school that I graduated from, and I got married and I had, whatever kids, and right, like everything was just very, very normal, very, very stereotypical. And then I was saved, because I wasn't saved as I was growing up. I was a non-believer. I was an atheist. And so then I got saved, and then I was still like living a life as that, because that's what I understood and that's what I knew and that's what made sense to me. And then I had some tragedy happen in my life, my own personal tragedy that I caused, really all on my own. And then I really got to see the Lord for who he was, right? He saved me out of this like horrible place. Got to see him for who he was. And so like there was this like turn in my life. And once I had this turn in my life, then Jesus opened this door to a missions trip with some amazing women, we had men come with us as well, but we were like tucked together as women, and we got to grow and change and really serve together in a way that mattered. And it was a blessing to be chosen, to ask. It was a small group. There were only 4 of us. And so it was a great privilege and honor to be chosen to be part of this group, to go out and serve the Lord in this way. But when I did that, I gave up a little bit of what I am here. I still had younger kids at home. And so I had to say, I'm going to a war-torn nation, and I'm going to be serving the Lord in this war-torn nation. I wasn't there very long, but still, like, anything can happen. It's a 13-hour plane ride. So anything can happen between here and now and there and all of these other things. There's people standing with guns all over the place. And so it's not the easiest of things to say that you're going to do. And you're really putting your trust and faith in the Lord, I believe, in order to do it. So I say all that because when I did it and I trusted, amazing things happened. And I'm going to say the same thing happened to these 70. They were given this calling. The Lord said, I call you, I choose you, and I want you to go out. And they had to say yes or no, right? They had to make decisions at home. Hey, honey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to be a lamb among wolves. I'm not sure what can happen to me out there, but once I go out there, I'm going to be preaching the Lord. I'm going to be letting people know that he's coming. And then I'm going to come back home again. But it says when they came back, Return of the 70, it said, even the demons are subject to us in your name. So he gave them the power to go out and do healings and miracles. And so they were like, even Satan is subdued under our name. And Jesus warned them. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, it is like nothing to get puffed up in your own amazingness. And that's what I think he's talking about here. Like it takes little, someone says to you, oh my gosh, I couldn't even see the Lord until I heard your story. And that excited me so much. That same thing happened to me. And it opened my eyes to the Lord and you saved me. Right? Like and that could be like the littlest of things, right? Imagine walking out and saying, I rebuke you, and a demon leaving this person, freeing them from whatever pain or anything that they had, and watching them be healed. And just to think of the power that you now have because of the Lord. But even so, it's in your body, right? Like, so it is hard not to get puffed up. It is hard not to believe in our own pride, right? Especially depending on how much we do or don't trust the Lord. So it's hard not to say, like, well, he picked me. Let's just even say, right? First of all, it's me. I'm strong enough that I could do it. Or he picked me because I'm so amazing that I can do it, right? So we definitely get stuck into all these traps. Jesus is warning them. He says, don't rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are recorded in heaven. Do not forget the big thing. That stuff is great. That can come and go. By the way, just because you have the power to expel demons, or because you have the power to heal, or because you have the power to prophesy, it doesn't mean you will always have that, right? But you will always, as long as you stay close, you will always have the Lord. Rejoice that your names are there for the Lord to see. He said, at that very time, he rejoiced greatly in the Holy Spirit. He says, I praise you, Father, Lord in heaven, that you have hidden these things from the wise and intelligent and have revealed them to infants. So what I think he is doing, and I don't want to say tongue in cheek, because I don't think that Jesus is really tongue in cheek, but what I think he's doing is reminding them, I sent you out, right? Everyone in the area didn't think that you were the greatest of all things. If you remember when he gave that sermon, whether it be on the mount or the plain or whatever, but when he gave that sermon, he said, blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor in spirit, right? Because what he knew is those flocking to him tended to be those people, right? Those people were looking, desperately searching for a Messiah. When you are broken, it's really easy to desperately be searching for something outside of yourself that is going to heal, right? It is a lot harder when we're in the best of spaces, which is why the Pharisees and the Sadducees were like, no way, man, you not the one, because you're lowly and you're nobody important, right? Because those are seen as less than. And so Jesus is reminding them, you guys are infants, and you should feel blessed that the Lord has chosen to reveal this to you because you are infants. This was kept from the big and mighty and given to you. And for that, you can thank the Lord alone, because he chose to give it to you. Now he moves on, and it says a lawyer, because it says, turning to the disciples, he says, blessed are the eyes which see the things you see. For I say to you that many prophets and kings wished to see that. And I'm going to say the things that they see are Jesus and all of the things that Jesus is doing. The prophets wished that they would have been alive when the Messiah came. Everyone wanted to be around when the Messiah came. And he's like, blessed are you guys, because you're here when the Messiah is here with me, who you get to see. And then he says, and a lawyer stands up then and says, teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? So there are other people there, and they are listening. And so this lawyer who is with the Pharisees and the scribes, right? So a lawyer, I'm going to say, different from the way that we live now. So a lawyer is one who knows the law and fights for the law. This is the same thing, but the law is God's law, right? It's not the nation's law. So it's not a lawyer that's like, I'm going to stand up in front of court for the nation's law and, fight for this guy's right to not go in jail or to be put in jail. This is the law according to the word of the Lord. These guys would have studied and known how to interpret and understand the law. So he's coming to him understanding a law. And he says, so according to the law, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? And he said to him, what's written in the law? So you know it, you're a lawyer, so tell me what's written in the law. And he said, how does it read to you? And he said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. So you will give everything to the Lord. And then in that, you will love your neighbor as you love yourself. And again, I've probably mentioned this before, but for those who are going to be like, well, I don't really love myself. We all love ourselves. We all put ourselves first. And I know that might be a harsh way to say it. But the truth is if we get offended or upset or angry, it's because we feel like someone has inflicted on our rights and we don't want them to do that, right? So like we definitely find ourselves to be extremely important, and our needs and our desires are very important. And what he's saying is love your neighbor as much as you love yourself, right? So make sure their desires are as important as your desires. Their wants and needs are as important as your wants and needs, right? So that's how we're supposed to love our neighbor. Love your God first, and therefore, because you love your God, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, this is where we come down to the story of what we call the Good Samaritan. So he said, you've answered yourself correctly. And then he says, let me give you a parable. A man was going down. And I just want to kind of float into this just a little bit, because this story is like, I mean, all of his parables are amazing. This parable is amazing. So he says, man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, because it's like in the fine details. And he says, and he fell among robbers. So this guy is going from Jerusalem to Jericho. These are really important places. This is why this matters. So he's going from Jerusalem to Jericho. This is where like the temple is. They stripped him of his stuff. They went away, leaving him half dead. Now, a priest is going down the road. So they're in Jerusalem, in this like little area from Jerusalem to Jericho. And here comes a priest. A priest is extremely important, right? He is the pious. He is the one, like, don't think of priests today. Think of priests in Israel. So hopefully you did your Old Testament with me. Think of priests in Israel. These are the ones that are the bridge, right, between your average Joe Schmo, your person, and the Lord. They're the ones who are the connection between. Now, as Christians, we don't have that anymore. We're all priests. But back then, that was not true. So priests had a very specific job that was given by the Lord. And those priests were to take the sacrifices, and they were to be that bridge between, right? Like, because they couldn't, people couldn't go directly to the Lord. They couldn't go in the Holy of Holies. They couldn't go inside that special tabernacle. So they had to be, the priests were in that. The priest walked right on by this person, which, by the way, according to the law, might not have been a big deal. Why? Because this person probably looked dead. And a priest can't go near a dead body, because they would have to cleanse themselves for 7 days, right? Like, because to be near a dead body would be unclean. So somebody listening to this would go, okay, well, a priest walks by. Yeah, he looked like he was dead. Okay. Second person comes by. It's a Levite. Here we go again. So priest is kind of up here. Levite's like here. Like regular people, by the way, are down below my camera. Levites are up here. It's that entire tribe of Levi that was all chosen to serve in the temple. Again, wearing special robes. They get special, they get paid by everyone in the area, giving their sacrifices. So again, another important person, a person that everyone would have been looking up to, like, oh, it's a Levite. He's so special and spectacular. Levite also goes right past. And we can say it's for the same exact reason. The reason that he walked past was because, oh my gosh, I can't stop and break my time with this. And by the way, it also says the priest was going down that road when he saw him. A Levite also, when he came to a place and saw him. But a Samaritan who was on a journey. Samaria and Jerusalem are nowhere near each other. So the priest and the Levite were right there. They were like, literally like, oh, this guy got beat up out my front door, essentially. The Samaritan is on a journey from Samaria. He's going through Jerusalem, which he shouldn't have been allowed to do, because the Samaritans usually passed by that area because they were so hated. Samaria and the people in Jerusalem despise each other, northern kingdom, southern kingdom. So they had animosity between each other. So he really shouldn't have been in that area. He could have gotten beat up himself. He could have gotten, hate all over the place from it. So he was already in a place where it wasn't super safe for him to stop for anything. And he does. He stops. He offers this guy way more than, I don't want to say that he deserves, but he brings him to a hotel, says, I'm going to pay your debt. Hoping that sounds familiar, right? So he says, I mean, and obviously the guy's still sick, but if this guy can't be healed or he anything that he needs to get better, I will come back. I will pay all of his debts off, right? And then Jesus follows up and asks, which one is the neighbor? So the lawyer was trying to get him. He was this is like, we still do this. We still do this all the time. You say I'm supposed to love someone. Well, doesn't love mean I should let everything go? No, it doesn't mean that. We can't go by these fine details that just make us feel better about ourselves. We need to understand the entirety of the law of the Lord, which is compassion and love and honor of God. Love God above all things, and then love your neighbor, and then recognize that your neighbor is anyone at this point, is essentially what he's saying. So who's my neighbor? It doesn't mean he's a fellow Israelite, right? Like in this story, it would be like, oh, my neighbor's a fellow Israelite. I only need to be kind and compassionate to fellow Israelites. But the Samaritan, right, was a neighbor to this guy where his fellow Israelites were not, because of certain boundaries and laws that he needed to protect himself. Our compassion, right, for loving someone should be bigger than our fine minutia of what we believe. I don't want to say what we believe is right and wrong. That's kind of a horrible way to say it, because what we believe through God is right and wrong is really important. But holding up a boundary that keeps us from loving someone as ourselves or loving the Lord, right, in those ways, these are boundaries that we should not be holding up. And so for us, this is going to be like, the lawyer asked this question. This is really important because I think we need to ask these questions. We need to know, and this is why biblical literacy is like the most important thing, because we need to know in every instance, should I be the Samaritan? What does it look like to love on my neighbor in a practical way that doesn't keep a boundary between us, that doesn't hold us against each other, or hold me from going, well, it wouldn't look good if I did this, and so I'm not going to do that, right? So like, we need to be as compassionate and loving as that Samaritan was to that person who got hurt on the road. And now I'm just going to finish up, because I think that was kind of like the bulk of it, but just going into this Mary and Martha thing, because this is a lot of the same stuff. How do we do that? How do I know what to do? And the truth is it's right here contrasted with Mary and Martha. Once again, we talk about rules versus love and compassion. Martha, I want to make sure it's Martha. So there was these two sisters, Mary and Martha, right? And it was Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Lazarus was the brother of these two sisters. And so they invited him into their home. And again, here we go. It was really important to look a certain way, have certain food, right? There were all these boundaries. Women shouldn't have been crossing over certain boundaries, right? All of these rules to follow according to the rule and laws of the land, which we always expand. We kind of always take them extra far a lot of times, and we forget compassion. Mary sat at the feet of Jesus. Martha's working. Fantastic. No one said don't work. Here's the issue. Martha is said, you are worried and bothered about so many things, but only one thing is necessary. So what does that mean? You are bothered about, and I don't want to take away that certain things are extremely important, right? Because any kind of like turning away from the Lord is really bad. And so I want to be really careful not going, rules don't matter, because that's not true. But rules without compassion don't matter. Mary was sitting at the feet of Jesus so she would know who Jesus is, so she could follow Jesus in the best way according to Mary and who Mary was. And Martha was worried and bothered. She didn't just do her work. She was worried and bothered and set off by what Mary was doing. And he said, hers is the better thing. She's learning at my feet. She's loving on me. You are worried and bothered. Great that you're cleaning up, and great that you're feeding me, but you're worried and bothered. If you were doing it compassionately and lovingly, I think that he would not have rebuked her. I think he rebuked her because she was worried and bothered, because she wasn't content in doing the things that she was doing. And Mary was learning at his feet. So when it comes time for Mary to be loving, she's going to know the way that Jesus loved, and she's going to be able to follow suit because she's sitting there at his feet. This is kind of for us. We got to go home with sitting at his feet, which for us right now, sitting at his feet means being in his word and in prayer. It's not a magic pill. It doesn't fix everything, doesn't make you a perfect person. But what it does is it brings us at the Lord's feet in humble submission, which is what we go back to. The prior and kind of like part one is what it means to submit all that we are and all that we have to the Lord. So that's it for today. Done Luke 10, moving on to Luke 11 next time. If you have liked this, I want you to like, share, and subscribe, right? If this has been a blessing, and I want you to keep reading. I will see you guys on the next video.